Hey, B2B leaders, feeling stuck in your growth journey as you've exhausted all your plays? Tired of doing things the same way and not seeing results? I'm Stacie Sussman, your host, and this is C-Suite Strategies, your podcast for the explosive business growth you've been chasing. We'll bring you conversations with industry visionaries who've truly mastered the art of scaling businesses. This isn't just theory, it's what we live and breathe every single day. Get ready for game-changing insights that'll transform your approach to business growth. Whether you're a seasoned C-Suite executive or an ambitious founder, we've got you covered. C-Suite Strategies is your backstage pass to reaching that next level of business. Follow C-Suite Strategies now, and let's make this your new reality. Hey everyone, welcome to our latest episode of C-Suite Strategies. I'm your host, Stacie Sussman, and we are so excited to have our guest here. We are going to explore the art and science of scaling businesses with one of our personal friends and industry leaders, Matt Austin. Matt is a powerhouse, former VP of sales in fast-growing scale-up companies. Matt and I met each other through a private networking community, and from day one, I knew he was the real deal. He's experienced sharp and humble grittiness in the trenches of sales, revenue, and operations, and we're super excited to have a conversation that we think, and we know you, our listeners, are going to love, that talks about being in a high executive, high achieving sales role and the pressure that comes with it and the clarity that comes with it and what's that look like. So if you're a sales leader in the messy middle of scaling your company, this conversation is for you. So the title today is Behind the Numbers, Why Even Grit Can't Save a Broken Business Model. Matt Austin, welcome to the pod. How are you?
Hey, I'm good, Stacie. Thanks for that glowing introduction. I'll try to live up to the hype as we get through this.
All good. I know you well because I already know you. So for our listeners, please just give them a brief bio about you, what you've been up to in the corporate world, what you're up to maybe in the entrepreneurial world now, and anything else you want to share with our listeners.
Yeah, I'll keep it quick. I've spent my entire 18-year professional career in sales. I started way back in the day as an SDR and kind of worked my way up through the ranks. Spent the last, I guess it's 12 years now in various leadership roles, leading regional, national, and international sales organizations, primarily in high growth technology startup companies. My final corporate role ended last year and decided it was time to go out and kick off on my own. I just started a company this year called Revenue Caddy. We're really, I try to think of this kind of very similar to what a golf caddy does, right? If any of you listeners are golf fans, the golf caddy is not just the guy that carries the bag. It's a strategic advisor for the player on the course, right? And their knowledge and their ability to judge all of the different environmental things going on a golf course to allow the professional golfer to provide or apply the best swing and the best stroke to shoot the lowest score possible. I've kind of taken that approach with sales in early stage and typically, seed and Series A companies, helping them understand not just kind of the blocking and tackling of sales, but how they apply that in the environment that they're currently operating.
Love that. I love the story behind Revenue Caddy. I didn't know that. So that's something to learn. And I always talk about professional athletes, and I usually use Kobe Bryant as the example, is the Mamba mentality and how Kobe used to show up, 120% on the court. But if you read his biography and his books and everything he used to write, it was the village of therapists, trainers, his family, his kids that carried him to achieve, really greatness and perfection beyond what's humanly possible. And so I believe it takes a village. And I always do use the professional athlete as a really good, because you show up at the NBA on the court and you're like, oh, this looks so easy, but it's not. There's so much work that goes in behind the scenes. So love that. Awesome. So talk to us about scaling in your most recent corporate environment. Talk to us about what made you want to scale a global company that was really big time and prominent in Europe. And they wanted you to come in and be the guy that helped them scale the Americas as the VP of sales. Please talk to us about what got you excited about that opportunity and maybe past experiences that you had that you felt really confident that this was a great, next step for you.
Yeah, when I was approached to even start in conversations about this, right? It's a company that was at a size that I really like, right? And I go kind of look back at where my strengths are. I've always been a builder, right? I want to be able, let's duct tape and chewing gum some things. Let's see what works. Let's test. Let's iterate. I don't do as well in environments where I'm kind of managing or babysitting other people's things, right? It doesn't get my juices flowing quite as much. And so they came to me with this opportunity with a company that worked in a space that I've worked at in my two previous companies.
What is that space?
It's a kind of industrial automation. So we served building automation clients. We served industrial clients, oil and gas clients. They're a cybersecurity technology company, which, you can't look at anything news related today that doesn't talk about cybersecurity. So that was really attractive. But really, it was an opportunity to kind of take all of the bits and pieces that I'd learned over the years and really kind of put my own thumbprint on something. And for me, that was really exciting. And so, after we'd gone through kind of a lengthy interview process and the offer was extended to come in and do this, I jumped at the opportunity.
What do you think past experiences, industry, probably hot topic with the economy? Just talk to me tactically about what do you think the levers that you were like, industry I like, this will give me a chance to broaden my skill set in sales. This gives me a chance to test and iterate. Talk to me about some of those pieces that you were like, when I get in there, I'm excited to do these things because I have some great ideas about these things, but give some context to this.
Yeah, really. So all of the above of what you mentioned, right? It was an industry I knew. It was a technology that was exciting. It was a company that was making a couple of different transitions that I thought were going to be really fun to be a part of. Primary transition was they'd been historically for about 10 years, a perpetual sales company that was trying to make the jump to a recurring revenue organization. And I've actually done that at two other companies, right? And so I had some experience there. I knew where some of the landmines were, right? But in most of these things, there's still plenty of them that I didn't know about till I stepped on. So that was really fun. The U.S. was their primary growth lever. And so through the interview process, I got to talk to board members. I got to talk to multiple members of the executive team. And really, they were doubling down on what the Americas could be for their organization. And so when you looked at kind of company size, you looked at team size and the ability to grow that. They also had not put kind of any real structure around revenue in North America other than hire a couple of salespeople, right? And so for those of us that have worked in recurring revenue businesses, new logo sales acquisition is extremely important. And it's how you kind of feed the engine. But there's a lot of other pieces that go into really building a revenue engine for the organization that captures that recurring revenue cycle. And so this was going to be my chance to step out of, either sales direct role or a post account direct role and have the opportunity to put the whole piece together. And so that was something I hadn't had full responsibility before. And it was another thing that excited me as a way to kind of push and grow and expand my skill set as a leader.
So come in, you're super excited. You have what I would say is like a blank canvas at the end of the day. You probably had some, I'll say legacy salespeople that obviously were there before you. But talk to me about the two or three things that you were like, right away, these things we need to go in and put structure around. Because I think blank canvas could be great, but it also could be scary that you're like, am I pulling the right levers at the end of the day? And us at RevUp Advisory, who does growth, we've seen so many different levers you can pull, but it's pulling the right strategic levers in a waterfall methodology to get where you need to go. So how did you kind of choose? Because I'm sure it's like everything's either on fire or there's nothing to develop. There's nothing there we need to develop, but that can also be exhausting too.
Yeah. And it's a little bit terrifying, right? Because now you know that like every decision that gets made is one that you are putting forward and you've got to stand behind. And, so I'll talk about it strategically and kind of work down to some of the tactical pieces. And
Sure.
I think for any revenue leader coming into a new organization, there's two things you need to do. Number one is you need to understand what kind of team you're inheriting, right? And generally I find there's three buckets, right? There's the team that's just, it's a sinking ship, it's burning. We need to come in and bail as much water as we can bail as quick as we can just to get this thing seaworthy again, right? There's kind of that middle road where things are going okay, but there's a lot of opportunity for improvement, right? That will help us get to the goals that we want. And then there's the unicorn where you get brought in and everything's running really well. It's lubed, it's greased, it's ready to rock and roll. All you got to do is get in there and step on the gas and let's go. The third one I've heard about, but I've never seen. I think it's kind of a Sasquatch, but understanding what you're coming into kind of then drives what the first initial tactical steps you need to make are. And fortunately for me, I inherited a team that was good with lots of opportunity for improvement, right? And,
the best kind.
And I think that's the most fun, right? Because you get to, as a builder and someone that likes to grow people, it's a great situation to be able to do that. And I think, in the interview process, it's always a great company and people are great and all this stuff. And it's, you kind of get into the weeds.
Yeah.
You don't really
behind
know
the curtains.
Exactly. So for me, that was the first piece. It was like, okay, cool. The team is decent. They know what they're doing. We've definitely got some room for improvement. Anybody that's listening to this, that's done very early stage, I'm talking like getting to the first million, a lot of that's the Wild West, right? It's, I'm going to do what I need to do. I'm going to create what I need to create. I'm going to, whatever it takes to get that deal across the board. And that was a lot of the mentality that I inherited. Was there weren't a lot of defined processes. The definitions of things across the team were different for everybody that you talk to. It was working, but you could see this was going to fall apart pretty quick if that was the growth lever that we continued to use, right? And then I think the second thing that a leader needs to do is go back and just retest all the hypotheses, right?
Yeah.
Our board was convinced that we had product market fit when I got there, right? And I think a lot of companies kind of say, okay, cool, we've got two people that are buying from us. That proves product market fit. Now let's step on the gas. And realistically, there's a lot of steps to prove and to validate that you actually have fit in the market that you're trying to serve, that the personas that you're going after are the right people that can write the right size checks to bring the right size deals in to get things done, right? And so once I was kind of comfortable that the team was sufficient, I started focusing a little bit on let's just validate those background pieces. And I would say they were probably 50% there when I got them, right? Like we knew that industrial automation companies were the right people to target.
That's
we were
great.
targeting way
ICP
too low,
validated.
right? We knew that we had superior technology in the market compared to our competitors, right?
Huge
and kind of where we fit in the
advantage.
market, which is huge, right? And also made me really excited to kind of get in and engage. But we are also one of the things that I should have done a better job coming in was validating who corporate saw as our competition versus who was actually our competition on the ground in North America.
Yeah.
A lot of
Was that the narrative with the board or I don't know who you reported into or like talk to me about that. Cause that's a sticky point.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. No, I reported to our chief sales officer who reported to our CEO who reported to the board of directors.
Okay.
And they had done a great job competing against some European-based automation tools. But really, as I looked at the market when I started, like we were definitely steps above them as competition. I could see why they were doing so well against them in other markets. The other people that we talked about were kind of your really big names, your Cisco's, your Fortinets, your, those types of companies. And they did something way different at a completely different price point than where we operated. Right. And so it was cool when I got there. We had this little space in between that we could operate in. And as I looked at kind of the team and how the team was working and what the sales process looked like, it just became clear that like with some better execution, we could really go out and make a difference in year one. And so that became my primary focus for the first year in C was, okay, most of what I heard in the interview process is true.
Yeah.
Right? The team is in a pretty good place. Let's go find those little pieces that we can move the needle on that will help us in year one build momentum going into year two.
Yeah. So if I had to replay that back to you, I would say what we do at RevUp Advisory is make sure you have the solid foundation. And it sounds like you did actually have a solid foundations, but you could see what I use the house analogy. You can actually see kind of the cracks in the wall that were then potentially coming for the house or the organization. Yeah. But at the end of the day, you're like, we can patch that, fix that, pivot that in order to make that better. And I would say early stage, and we give this advice to so many early stage companies. I actually mentor for a few non-for-profit organizations, is what are your first 100 customers actually saying about you? And what are some patterns and synergies within those first 100 customers? I feel like so many people are flying the plane and building at the same time. They almost lose sight of what the customer says at the end of the day, and they just build what they think the customer wants at the end of the day. And that's where you're at two roads and things go awry at the end of the day. And then I feel like empowering the team to create standard operating procedures, processes, and being a little bit more buttoned up. What was working was great, but if you wanted to grow and stretch to the next revenue milestone, you'd have to, what I say is, put your big boy pants on and grow up a little bit, even though that's always a challenge with the team and the culture. But in order to grow and hit the revenue numbers that you were responsible for, things had to move and shift for the better at the end of the day.
Yeah, 100%. And the other side of that too is if we're not speaking the same language and we're not doing the same things day in and day out, it becomes really hard to diagnose where the problems are, right? Because at least if I know that I have 5 people and the 5 people are doing things similarly, I have a way to judge performance, right? But if everyone's doing something a little bit different, using different slide decks, different meeting follow-ups, different whatever, you never know what's actually working, what's actually not. And, startup salespeople, and I'm guilty of this. I was the same way. Like I build a way that's been working, and like I don't want to change that, right? Like I understand why you want it to change, but I really don't want to change that. And that was part of what I had to fight against in kind of bringing some of these processes to bear in the organization.
So give me some examples or talk through a scenario of like what you did. I mean, for us, we love CRMs, we love HubSpot, we love Salesforce. So like, how did you kind of rein in the cattle to be like, I need these metrics or I need to see these decks before they go out the door, or whatever it looks like, to be like, we need to hit these revenue numbers in year one, and some of these pieces that may feel uncomfortable are going to change, but it's going to be better for us to view pipeline forecasting, revenue, et cetera. And then headcount, I assume you brought in more team players.
Yeah, absolutely. I think kind of the first big battle, like if you want to call it a battle, that I had with the team was they had a lot of hapless, right? There's a lot of customers that really liked when they saw what we did. They liked what we did, right? But that didn't always convert to signed contracts. Right. Or if it did, it didn't convert to signed contract by the end of Q2. It'd slide into Q3, and then maybe we're into Q4. And, the team wasn't really good at being able to know, like, these are the 3 deals that are going to close this month. And these are the 3 deals that are going to close next quarter. And these are the 3 deals that I'm working on. They're long shots. It might be next year before we close. And so I brought in a methodology, kind of an opportunity methodology that I've used before. I'm sure everyone listening to this is familiar with MEDDIC or MEDPIC or whichever iteration of that you want to talk about. But I asked the team in the CRM that we were using, which was HubSpot, to actually fill in what are the metrics, right? And we stage gated them so that you can't move from stage 1 to stage 2 until you've filled this out. And the immediate pushback was,
They
well, that sounds like a lot
definitely didn't
more
like
admin work.
you.
Yeah, that's more admin work. I do enough admin work. I don't need to do more admin work. And I said, look, you guys don't know this. I've done this in multiple organizations and I have yet to see it fail, right? I've
Agreed.
seen it implemented poorly in places and utilized poorly in places, but I've never seen it actually fail. And so give me a quarter. Do this 100% for this quarter. And if you don't end this quarter in a better place than you started, I'll throw it out the window.
I love that.
Yeah. And that kind of silenced the critics. And by the time we got to the second month of the quarter, people were saying, oh, this is actually really cool. Right? Because
How
now
can we
they could
use
go.
these metrics?
Yeah. Well, and now they could go into the meetings that they were having with their customers and not just like, hey, what are we going to talk about today? Right? Like I knew as a sales rep coming into that call that I understood the metrics. I knew who I thought my champion was. I still didn't know who my economic buyer was. I don't know what the decision process is. So let's make sure as part of this meeting, I start to ask questions and hone in on that so that I have a better understanding of really where this deal is from a maturity perspective and how well I can count on it. I've got this as a March we're in Q2. So it's called a June 31 close date. Do I have a
Right.
chance of hitting that? Right. And it really started to provide better clarity for the sales reps, especially as they started asking the questions, right? Because you find people that didn't know the answers, right? Or the answers were a little bit different than you expected, right? And if we just kind of trundled along because they liked what we said,
We're
we
not
could have been in
getting
that
anywhere.
indefinitely.
Which marketing channel closed your last 3 deals? How much did you spend? And what revenue did it generate? At RevUp Advisory, we help CMOs prove marketing ROI with real attribution, connecting campaigns to closed revenue. We create strategic alignment between marketing and sales teams. And yes, we know the buzzword. We're using agentic AI too. If you're ready to show pipeline impact and scale with revenue predictability, contact Stacie Sussman, CRO at RevUp Advisory. Yeah. I would say, how lucky are those sellers? I don't know whether they're younger, older, who really cares age, but how lucky that you were able to teach them something like BANT, Medic, MedPick. There's so many versions of this at this point now, but I feel like somewhere along the way, we've lost teaching and sort of training, whether it's up and coming sellers or old timers that can use some new tricks. And how lucky are they that they did it, even if it was begrudgingly at the end of the day. And then they're like, wow, this actually helps us from a day-to-day perspective.
Yeah. Sissy, I was so fortunate at the beginning of my career that I had people that would take time out. And they were probably frustrated with some of the questions that I'd ask and re-ask but they spent the time and they taught me, right? And it had a significant impact on the trajectory of my career overall. And so one of the things that I said when I was getting into leadership, and even before I was in formal leadership roles, was that's been paid forward to me. It's my job to pay it back, right? And I need to kind of spend the time and help other people. And that's what I like about these smaller companies is the teams are small enough, the people, you can see, and the issue diagnosis comes well, and you can just start to add value to them, not just in their current role, but I hope that I've helped change the way they think about deal process in whatever sales role they take from this company, right?
That's huge. I was also fortunate enough to have some amazing mentors that I agree helped me get my next sales jobs, or mentors that I'm still personally friends with today. I've actually hired one of my mentors to work within RevUp Advisory. That felt like a huge win. I actually did a post about one of my mentors who's actually no longer with us, but just the impact of relationship selling. She was the guru master in New York City of relationship selling. And just to be able to witness and be in her orbit when I was a 20-something seller, have no clue, but I thought I knew everything.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, giving that back. And I do feel like the workforce has somewhere lost that along the way. I think we almost throw people into the fire sometimes and say, go for it. And if you sink, like, who cares? We'll replace you with someone else. And so I love that.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like so many people don't actually understand sales and go to market in
Yes.
general, right? Like they think they understand it, but it's still this kind of weird, murky thing. And like, okay, you're the salesperson. So like, just go call people, I guess.
Yeah.
Right. And we've become so caught up in performance metrics and all of these things
Yeah.
that we just expect people to figure out how to do. Like you wouldn't hire an accountant and give them a spreadsheet full of numbers and be like, good luck. Like, I hope it works out well. Right. But in sales, they've kind of seen that's the way to go. And I think you're right. I think it's to the detriment of kind of the sales profession in general.
Yeah, I agree. We have a client that I would say they're more like farmers than hunters, but they're moving into more of like a hybrid farming and hunting role. And they're really seasoned sellers at the end of the day. And it's just really interesting that, yes, medic, med pick, band, sales velocity, age of opportunities, how many days are they sitting in, what stages, and decay, and is it actually going to close in this year, or is it going to move into the next year just
Right.
because we started, a new year? And just to get metrics and scrutiny around that, but also like teach what that looks like. I'm like, it's just an eye opening to me because I guess we're for the fortunate ones that I was like, someone sat with me and probably was so frustrated, but really sat with me to explain it to me. And so I always say it's my duty to give back, but it's interesting you had that same experience and no surprise of why you ended up in the roles you ended up in too.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much out there. I think the other thing that doesn't get covered enough is the why,
Yeah.
right? People get told what to do. I need you to make 25 phone calls a day and send 30 emails a day and book 2 demos a day. And these are your metrics to go hit. Well, okay, but like, why? Like, what does that do for me if I do that? Right?
Right.
Like,
The
why does,
mechanics
and
behind.
you talked about, I think one of the most overlooked things in small companies is looking at like days and stage of opportunities, right? You will see a very, very dramatic trend between the deals that close and the deals that don't based on the days that they're in
100%.
opportunities. And if all you do is set an alert that if a stage 1 deal goes past 30 days, I want to know about it.
Right.
The impact that you can have on your pipeline hygiene, your ability for your salespeople to close more deals goes up by percentage points just from that one alert right there. Right. But these are things that as a seasoned sales leader, you kind of know. Uh,
Right.
but
It's
if you can't
intuitive almost.
tell that to somebody else, right? And I see that in my business now as I talk to founders and I talk to even venture capitalists, right? And a lot of these people are smart product people or really smart industry people who came up with a great product. And they said, okay, cool. I got 2 people to buy it. I'm going to go hire a sales team and I'm going to let them go sell. And you're like, whoa, like, are you sure that's how you want to use the capital? Right? Like, I know
That's
sales
the
is
best
hard
way.
and yeah, and sales is hard, right? And if you're not
Hard.
a seller, it's something I'd like to get off my plate as soon as I can. But there are so many steps in building the foundation to successful go to market. Like that's where we focus at Revenue Caddy is like, you keep doing, you keep selling, right? We're going to come in and follow and clean up the mess this tornado has left behind it, right? And help kind of rebuild so that when you're ready to really step on the gas, you've got a foundation in place that'll support it.
Yeah, and I love that because we optimize growth for companies 10 million in ARR and above. So I think we're talking probably like different growth milestones, but 10 million, 30 million, 80 million, I see the same stuff. The operations never evolved with the maturity of the sales and the marketing efforts. And there's this just like tsunami of data mess and inconsistencies. And we're trying to give a story and a narrative to the market, to the board, to the marketing team, to the sales team at the end of the day. And we have to do a lot of cleanup really at the end of the day to get you to tell you the real story and not the gut story that you think the business is running off of.
Yeah. And the pressure testing is so important, right? I mean,
So
I can't tell you the number of companies I've either worked at or have worked around or been part of or talked to people from that were like, well, look, we need to increase our deal size, so we're going to go enterprise.
Yeah. I
And
love that one.
the only sales process that we have is designed for an SMB or a mid-market sales, but we're just going to use that now, and we're going to go after enterprise companies, and we're going to do a 4-meeting close. And I can't figure out why this is not working, right? And one of my favorite analogies in this with my new business that I'm using is, look, like, go to Amazon today, go search up sales strategy or sales execution, and you'll find 1,000 books, right?
Right.
You can even, if you know enough about your business, you can do it for SMB, or you can do it for mid-market, or you can do it for enterprise, and at least narrow the, thousands and thousands down to a couple of thousand books, right? But if you've never actually done it, it's like a recipe for a chef, right? If I'm trying to bake bread here in Houston at sea level, or if I'm trying to do it in Colorado in the mountains, there's a lot of nuance that I've got to take into consideration for that bread to come out appropriately, right? I can't just substitute different kinds of chili peppers, right? Because it's going to have 2 very different outcomes, but they're both chili peppers, right?
Right.
And so copying and pasting from some of these great books and great manuals that are out there is okay, but it lacks the context. And I think that's
100%.
where companies like yours, companies like mine can come in and provide that. Like, look, I've been in this context before. This is what this really should look like, right? How do you know whether you do med pick, right? It's context, right? There's context that goes behind that. They're all great. And if I read a book about it, I'm like, this is the next best thing. This is going to solve all of my sales problems. Implement, right? Unfortunately, it's just not that easy.
Yeah, I was just on the call with our internal team, and we are looking to answer very detailed questions from the CEO because he has to prove validations to a new board. And I was just like, okay, we're going to tie campaign attribution to close one revenue at the end of the day. And that all sounds great in theory. And I think that's like a newer wave of thinking, marketing attribution to close one revenue. And it's something we do at Rev Advisory all the time. But there's a lot of steps and a lot of stakeholder conversations and a lot of data cleanup and a lot of migration and a lot of foundational updates that we need to do to get that CEO the answers. And at the end of the day, I mean, we kind of came up with this might be 6 weeks before we can get you the true answers that we want you to get. But is that good enough for the CEO? Is that good enough for the board? So it's like, is the level of effort worth it? Because if you ain't need the answer tomorrow, the answer is we don't have that answer, and here's why. But if you want to give us a couple weeks, we can get you the answer. But knowing true operations, there's always going to be some obstacle or roadblock that's come our way, which we'll get around, but it may take time. And I don't know if everyone has the patience for time.
Well, and I talk about kind of iterative expectations.
Yeah.
Right? Like, let's measure the lead flow first. How many leads are we getting in? Based on that, how many conversations are we having? Based on that, how many opportunities are we generating? Based on that, how many are we closing? Right? Let's just look at basic conversion rate metrics.
But we think about this.
Yeah. Right. And okay, but doing stuff like attribution is such a 4th and 5th level of operations. You can't just jump there. That's your first thing. We're going from no measurement to attribution.
No.
It sounds good in a book. It sounds good on a blog, right? But in practice, you can't just jump from one to the other, right?
Yeah, I love that. And one of our employees was like, well, on this person's, I won't mention their name, Substack, I read, these are all these different, the U shape, the W shape, the first touch, the last touch, and everything. And I was like, okay, that's great. But I've actually put into theory and practice, these models. This is where we're at. And this is what I think we can do based on, the appetite for the company. Because they all sound good, like you said, on a Substack or in a book. I read a lot of Substacks. But I'm like, has some of these people that are giving advice actually practically implement them into tens of thousands of ARR, reoccurring revenue companies? Talk to me about those stories. And I don't think they do. And so,
and I think what you get, and this is a whole nother podcast episode with you, Stacie, but like, Something that worked once is fantastic. I'm super happy for you that it worked. But please don't put that out there as that's the gospel, right? Because people will believe you based on your
Correct.
your status that this is the way to do it. Anytime I see a post on some of these social platforms that are like, copy this email and get 50 meetings a week. I'm like, oh, please, like, can we get a bot or something that just tears those down before they ever show up? Because there's no context, there's no ICP, there's nothing, right? And in some instances, that email is going to be awesome. In others, you're going to waste 6 months of people's times and maybe even cost them jobs because they've put all of their pipeline building into something that isn't relevant for the job that they're trying to do.
Yeah, 100%.
I'll get off my soapbox now. Sorry.
No, I 100% agree because I'm a big LinkedIn fan. I write content every day and I base and root my content in honesty, raw transparency, and experience. And so I'm growing that content and that arm organically. But I do feel like a lot of these influencers put content out, and it's exactly what you're saying. Like, show me when you've implemented that, or show me the metrics behind what that looks like. And what you're saying, it's that bread, right? Like the chili pepper in Houston versus the chili pepper in Denver, same ratio. It's going to come out differently in the bread at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so I think that's super important.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of these things we can harp on.
Yeah. Well, just give me, I know we had so many other things we want to talk about, but in interest in wrapping this episode, just give me kind of like one or two sort of learning lessons in that experience that you're like, people in these shoes need to understand this. Because I think you've hit on and touched on so many different points, but some people may say, oh yeah, I know about that. And some people will be like, med pick. I don't even know what they're talking about. Go Google that.
Yeah, and I thought about that too as I kind of if I had time to reflect on that journey. So I think the couple things I would say is, number one, make sure your ideas and expectations of strategically how we put these organizations together matches the rest of the leadership team. One of the days where I knew that maybe there was some trouble coming, we were talking about building a recurring revenue business, and I had an open headcount. And I said, look, I'm not going to spend this headcount on sales. I'm going to bring in somebody to start to do account management for us and start working with our current customers, get ahead of the renewal cycle, look for expansion opportunities, because really that's where recurring revenue companies make their money. Right?
Yeah, lifetime value.
New logo acquisition feeds it, but that's where the money's made. And my boss looked at me and said, well, I mean, I guess if you think that's important, you can go ahead and do that. And I was like, we're building a recurring revenue business, right? Why do we have nobody looking at the recurring side of the revenue engine? And so there was just like an ideology difference, right?
Right.
They wanted to hire as many salespeople as they could get in the door and competently train
for net new
just
logos.
Force top line revenue down people's throat, and we'd eventually get to where we needed to get to. Right.
The hard game.
It's a tough game, right?
Yeah.
The other thing is really deep dive in the plan to make plan, right? And that was one of my misses in the interview process was, we talked about what the revenue goals were. They'd kind of shown some kind of interesting things about how they were going to get to those numbers and what that looked like. And we talked about, look, we need 3 enterprise deals. We need 20 mid-market deals, and we need 40 SMB deals. I was like, okay, so at least they know the deal sizes they need and the math will get to where it goes. But what I didn't see when I walked in was that we were a 100% outbound pipeline generation company.
Right.
We had full cycle account executives, right? So we're having account executives that are SDRs, they're salespeople, they're account managers, and they need to be able to build more than 1x pipeline. Right? Because when I walked in, our total North America pipeline was 1.2x the goal for the year.
Wow.
So we couldn't miss, or we were missing the year, right?
Dead in the water.
Yeah, right. I mean, that math just doesn't work. There's no company I've ever heard of that bats 1,000, right?
Yep.
Most recurring revenue businesses, if you're batting 300, it's a good year.
Yep. I look
right?
at win
And
rate.
so
Yeah.
the math just, like you like to say, the math wasn't mathing,
The
right?
math
You couldn't get it to
math.
work. And when I brought that back to my bosses, we went into 2024 and said, like, look, I've looked at these numbers. I've gone 15 different ways through this and I can't make the math work. Like, can we sit down and go through it? Like you brought these numbers to me. How do you see this coming? Because obviously there's something I'm not seeing in this.
Right.
And we sat down and we went through the numbers, spent an hour going through these different numbers. And here's this and here's this. And we were off by 35 or 40% in what we could do versus what the goal was. I said, okay, so now let's schedule a meeting with the CEO because he needs to know this. We need to go back to the board and we need to either get more funding or we need to change these numbers because there's just there's no way. And the response was, well, hey, the numbers are the numbers and we're not going to go back and look at it.
Right.
And it was like, oh, okay. So that changes kind of the way you have to go about it and look at it. And I think those were two things that were misses on my side that I had the rose-colored glasses on.
Yeah, of course we all do.
And if I'd have dug in, I'd have walked away from the beginning instead of 2 years later. So
such good nuggets that I hope you all are listening to the end, because when the math doesn't math, you got to see the writing on the wall that either you got to change it from the top down or you got to go schedule some interviews at the end of the day.
Right.
Thank you, Matt Austin, for being on our pod today with Revenue Caddy. Matt, if folks want to get in touch with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, easy. It's matt@revenuecaddy.com, or I got a website at revenuecaddy.com. You can book some time there. We can have a conversation about what you're seeing, what you're doing, and how we can possibly jump in and fix it for you.
Amazing. Matt is great people, and we have collaborated together for a while now and had some of these deep, dark sales conversations in vacuum. So super excited to bring this conversation to the folks here on our podcast. I hope you stayed and listened to the end because your next big sales breakthrough may be an episode and away. Speak soon, pod. Bye. As we wrap up this episode of C-Suite Strategies, I want to express my sincere gratitude to you, our listeners, for tuning in and engaging with our podcast. Your commitment to business growth and operational excellence is what drives this podcast forward. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd be thrilled if you follow and subscribe to the podcast. Your help supports us to reach more ambitious business leaders just like you. And if you didn't enjoy it, well, I guess I'll see you never. This is your host, Stacie Sussman, Chief Revenue Officer at RevUp Advisory, signing off.